Lawson. I'm the Artistic Director of Forest Collective, and today we're just having a little discussion with our programming team about our program for this year. So I'd like to introduce Stephanie Osztreicher, who has been our manager of our theatre projects since 2010, and this year is working on a new work called Holy Dying. And then Elanor Weber, who is joining us in a new position this year, which is our producer for dance and film events, which are a part of our mini festival in December called Flooding in the Garden, which we're going to talk about today as well. So welcome, ladies. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
So I guess maybe we might just start talking about what projects we're all kind of working on for Forest, because we're all sort of working together and working in disparate areas, so they kind of cross over. So I guess the first two events are mainly my kind of babies. We have the Garden of Ice, which is happening this Friday. Today's Thursday, so it's tomorrow, which is a purely contemporary music concert. With the idea behind it is that we have music from Scandinavia, from both living composers and established composers, pitted against two young emerging Australian composers, being myself and a new commissioned work from Australian composer based in London, Lisa Aline. So the program has very kind of icy Nordic Scandinavian music. And it's primarily a music recital. And then in July we have a very exciting piece which Stephanie's staging, which is two opera singers, a chamber ensemble, and then a new design installation work at the Kew Courthouse, which will be an interactive work for the performers, and this installation piece based around the idea of a relationship and how people meet, fall in love, and eventually how this relationship decays. So in the piece we look at a lot of very famous classical music and also some pop and contemporary music that looks into love and emotion and feeling. So they're kind of my two projects. In October we have Holy Dying, which I think Steph will be a bit more better qualified to talk about.
Sure. Well, so in October, as part of the Fringe Festival, we'll be presenting Holy Dying, and it will be at the Mama Courthouse. So that's really great. And Holy Dying, it comes from a 17th century book of the same name, and it's a religious text written by Jeremy Taylor, and it's all about the way to divine death, and what you have to do, how to look at life, and how you can help someone achieve this. Now, the way that we're going to look at it is not through the eyes of someone religious, but what this idea of having a holy death means to all people, no matter if what you believe and what your culture is. And so it's going to be an exploration with the text through physical theatre, music, which will be composed by Evan, and also we'll be looking at a sound installation as well on top of that. So it will be all these different elements in order to look at the concept of Holy Dying in a unique way.
It's obviously a lot of these works are still in development, but it's almost vignettes in a way, isn't it?
Yeah.
And sort of taking the book and looking at it overall, but also looking at the sort of smaller parts of it, because it's kind of, from what I gather of the text, it's kind of a case study into different stories in a way. And then,
and then how that affects you personally, from looking at it. I mean, I'm really interested in the whole idea of transposition of, something that's not a theatre text, but then turning it into a theatrical form. Same with taking bits of music and visual art and then creating a story out of that and seeing what happens. And
sort of next life.
that next life. And really, I believe that, art, once it's out there or once something is put out there into the world, it has a life of its own. And then it is okay to then take it and change it and evolve it, knowing where it came from, but seeing, then someone taking these ideas that will be brought up in the text, and, that might affect them, and they might take that on in their personal life or take it into some other way. And
the work will have an interesting life this year because it's got the season at La Mama, but then it's also going to Burunja in Belgrave in October 19th. Yeah. So we have a second performance, a second season, out of Melbourne, which is a first for Forest. It's our first sort of showing outside of the metropolitan area of Melbourne, and it will again be just a different. It'll bring a different light to the piece.
That's it, and just having something that is changeable. I think that's so important, not to get too stuck into an idea and a concept, and giving it a chance, the work to breathe and be inspired by what's around you as well. And I think Forest is really good at that. In wherever we put on a show, we're very heavily influenced by what venue we use or what surrounds us, and that has a large thing to do with what the final product is.
Definitely.
Therefore, the show that will be at La Mama will probably be quite different to the show that's at Burrinja. But that's an element of the company that's really exciting.
Yeah, definitely. We'll bring Elanor in on this one, talk a little bit about December. So I guess I should probably talk about Mingled Yarn, which is our... So we have 3 events for December, 2 of which is sort of Eleanor's babies and 1 is mine. The one that I'm sort of looking after is called the Mingled Yarn, which is a celebration of Shakespeare in his anniversary of his birth, I believe it is this year. And we're taking 4 famous characters from Shakespeare plays, and it's sort of the life that they've led since those plays have been written. So in the time that has transpired since them being created by William. So Samuel Yeo, a director, writer, will be taking care of that. And then alongside that will be music of Shakespeare's time, as well as contemporary music that was written to Shakespeare's words. So that will all kind of come together at the Abbotsford Convent. And then we'll also have our other 2 events in December. So December will be very busy.
Yeah, certainly. The dance event is titled The Texture of It, and it unfolds in 5 discrete sections, which will be in an immersive space. And I'm excited to collaborate with Benjamin Harrison on that with music, and Robert McDonald, who is Benjamin. It works with trumpet and a lot of improvisation practice, and he's bringing together the team of musicians, including Robert McDonald. I'm choreographing the dance, and I'm completing an initial phase of development very soon, between May and June, July. The beautiful Amanda Lever is going to help me out with that.
Great.
And we're going to add a few more dancers to the team, and that will reveal those, the casting, as it evolves.
Cool.
And we're also in initial discussions with Cassandra Littlehands about adding some textural, sculptural works to the piece, or some pieces that the dancers can interact with. So it'll be really exciting and beautiful to set against one of the Abbotsford Space convent spaces. And the film event, I should have a chat about that. We're programming 3 sections, 3 genres of films: short narrative, documentary, and cinedance works by independent Australian artists, and it'll be a beautiful mix of rarely seen works before, and maybe a few premieres thrown in there by some local artists. So that's
we're looking
exciting.
At applications for that as
We're
well.
looking
aren't we?
for expressions of interest. So if you would like to email dancemedia@forestcollective.com.au.
Yes. Yeah.
We would love to hear from you.
Yeah. So I guess that's the year. So as you can tell, it's a big year for all of us. So we've got sort of such an array of events. I guess I'd like to talk a little bit about. The 3 of us, we've sort of worked together on Shared Lines. Last year was probably the project that brought us all together. But like Stephanie and I have been working together for now many years.
Yeah.
I guess how much are these works, and it's so quintessential with Forest and contemporary art in general, but I guess how much collaboration is important to your practice, and how much in these works where I know in my what I'm doing is where you put together a program and your ideas, but then you bring the people into the room, and how much that can change. I guess all of these works are still in development, but how much already made work have changed, or just the influence of collaboration on you with your working?
Well, I think that even if you are a solo artist, no matter what your discipline is, you learn early on that you can't actually work by yourself.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen by yourself.
Yeah.
And that journey of finding other artists who complement your work or inspire you becomes such an important thing. And even, I guess, the way that I'm approaching my project this year is to really keep it open and to do readings and put it out there to other artists that I trust. And, Forest Collective, we've kind of accumulated all those people. It's wonderful. And their ideas or their initial thoughts, pushes it into one direction or another. Whereas it is so easy to just get stuck in your own head and then things don't really progress and it becomes very two-dimensional if you don't put it out there with other people.
Definitely. And how about you, Elanor? I mean, your work is purely collaborative, really.
Yeah, that's where I start in a lot of my processes with the materials that are there, and through playing in the space in a really highly collaborative and improvised way, first to start to par out where our interests kind of cross over, and that's what's kind of really exciting about the matching with Ben's background in improvisation, that we can work with our ideas of those two forms and come together in the space and be really just feeding off one another back and forth.
And I guess we should mention that Ben, this is probably Ben's actually quite heavily involved this year and last year. He had he performed solo in both Shared Sounds, Shared Lines. He provided some of the backdrop for the collaborative work that Stephanie put together for Shared Lines, which was Eleanor's first show. Ben's also written a work which will be in the Garden, the July event. So he's providing a new work for classical instruments and classical ensembles. So he's coming at it as from a jazz perspective, which is another new area for Forest to kind of have this sort of jazz area as well, which is quite interesting.
And I think it's important to note that the way that we work with all these different, this collaborating with different disciplines is not so anything stands by itself and it's just a support, is that they are actually working together alongside each other to tell stories or to create, an effect that we want. So it's not, this dance piece.
Process,
with music by so and so.
Yeah, totally. And I think even like the concert tomorrow night, which is a straight sort of more formal recital, there's still an element of collaboration work. Obviously, we're working on new pieces, working with composers.
Who you choose becomes very important.
Exactly, and who is performing becomes important, because it's a matter of who can obviously do that work, but who wants to do that work, and that's so influential on our programming and what we can do. And then obviously next to that is our partners and these wonderful venues and supporters who contribute in various ways, artistically, financially, whatever it is, so we can actually be viable.
And that's the biggest challenge, is to, it's wonderful when it all comes together, but the process of actually finding, the right people to collaborate with, the right venues for us, the right program,
milk crates to make the stage out of, the right lights.
It's really, really hard. It's exciting, but it's a challenge.
Totally.
But it's worthwhile.
Well, that's the thing, is it's sticking to a vision. Yeah.
And believing in that. That's
totally. And I guess one thing to touch on would also be just why we're here and why we're doing it. And I think, that's something we get so carried away sometimes in just putting together work. What do you think the quality is in, not necessarily your own piece, but just in collaborating and producing work that we produce?
Yeah.
Do you feel that you've...
Well, why?
It's not a small question.
To find new things, I think, like to be taken outside of what, I guess, your initial ideas were, or what and allow for the surprises and the things that come out that you didn't expect. I guess that's why I get excited about collaboration, because it takes me outside of what I thought something was going to be, and I learn something new.
I believe in the power of live performance, and it's something that it's shaped me as a person, and it's exciting, and it's I almost feel like, you know, you're able to break out of, you know, formulas that we see on TV and, you know, hear on the radio and see on the movies, and you know, it can go anywhere, and that is something that we should all embrace and just go as far as we can, because it's one of the you know, fantastic luxuries we have in life, that we can experience this, and it, you know, it's part of our history, you know, since forever, and it keeps evolving, and it's about other people, it's about who you work with, it's about who you're doing it for, and that's such a you know, wonderful, you know, way to exist, and it's why I choose to exist this way. It's you know,
so inspiring.
It is.
Yeah. And I guess one final question, which is just a bit of fun. Who do you think your biggest influences are on your work? Just names that jump out.
Goodness.
They could be, you know,
alive,
dead.
I mean, well, these days, obviously, after training at Lecoq, you know, Jacques Lecoq, you know, and that whole pedagogy has, you know, had a huge influence on my current work.
So Stephanie studied for 2 years.
Physical theatre in Paris. But actually, I tend to write a lot to music when I'm developing theatre work. And although I could list you off all these directors and things like that, but my favourite musician is Rufus Wainwright, and there's a quality in his work, in his music, which I find, which is theatrical without being, you know, of the musical genre, musical theatre. It transcends
the
something.
Storytelling.
Olaf Arnolds is another musician who I think, you know, again, transcends genre and how you can use it. He writes a lot for scores for movies and TV shows, and you know, it's another way of this, you know, interdisciplinary work, and so I actually find that I draw a lot of inspiration from music, hence why I work with a composer.
I guess myself, I've been really influenced by my early mentors at WAPA, and those would be especially Sue Peacock and Olivia Millard, who I practiced 3 years of improvisation with, Rosalind Crisp, Deborah Hay, their practices, and you know, even going back further, Yvonne Rayner, and and also like in kind of this abridged kind of filmmaking and dance world, like going back really far, Maya Darren's work I find incredibly inspiring, and to, you know, people I really look up to in the community, Tracy Mitchell and Diane Reid and Sue Healy. I think I could just go.
Yeah. Well,
keep
that's
going. You keep going.
It's limitless.
I mean,
I
feel
hope
like
I haven't missed anyone out that I just, you know.
You know, I mean, I feel I should include actually some people from my genre.
There's some missing. You know.
I think it's just fascinating to know what makes people click. And
my peers make me click as like that's probably like
the most influential.
New
the most
ideas,
influential,
and most direct
my
because
friends.
you're there with them.
It's happening now. You know, you can look at you know, the great works. So, I mean, I maintain that seeing Einstein on the beach last year, Robert Wilson. I mean, that, you know, for me was like, okay, that is something where all of this can go. But you know, who is here now that, you know?
Well, those works are sort of the great monolith of inspiration, and then it's, especially when you're working on in an emerging capacity, there's only so big you can get. So it's sort of that's the ideal.
Yeah. So it's important to know that.
Yeah, totally. Well, thank you both for joining us, joining me. And all of the details of all of our projects are on our website, forestcollective.com.au, and all the tickets are on sale for everything, pretty much. So buy all the tickets and come see all the work that we're slaving away on.